What's up, everybody? My name is Indy, and it's Friday, and that gentleman next to me is Mr. Jay Powell from Powell Group Consulting, and welcome to Indie Game Business. We want to thank Tripwire Presents for being an amazing sponsor, and today we're talking with, I don't know if I can butcher this, Oscar Hogervorst. Did I say that good?
Close enough. Yeah, that's actually pretty amazing.
Close enough.
That's what we aim for. Yes.
Is not completely butchering it. Some of the biggest challenges publishing on Steam today is the topic, and I know everyone's going to get a lot of good information out of this, but take it away.
So, welcome, Oscar. Let's start at my favorite question, where we always start. Tell us how you actually got into the game industry, and walk us through what you've been doing up to this point.
So I'll try to keep it really short because doubt anybody's interested in that. But
we are interested. That's why we ask.
Yeah, okay, that's true. So I actually never really wanted to work in games. I was like a radio guy when I was in school. But then I did an internship and I noticed that radio was actually sort of a dying medium. So I got to explore a little bit further and ran into games and figured out how superior it is in terms of like engagement and involvement and as a medium, as a I feel that there's some audio issues, but I'll continue talking a little bit and then see what's up. So I worked for the different game companies, and I started my analytics company, mostly about behavioral analytics within the games itself. And from that point of view, I actually noticed that there's so much tools and tricks and things that you can do for the mobile game space, but for Steam there was really nothing there. So that really inspired me to sort of figure out a way to translate all of these super helpful solutions that exist on the mobile space that help with the discoverability issues that exist there to the Steam area or the Steam platform. And that's been a few years ago now. And we've been doing that ever since.
So tell us, especially like over the last 3 years, and Steam is one of those things that is constantly changing. The algorithm makes adjustments, and now we've got Next Fests and all these different things, on addition to more and more games being released every single year. What are some of the biggest challenges that publishers and developers who are self-publishing are facing right now on Steam?
Yeah, I think those challenges are bigger than one change or one algorithm adjustment or something like that. I think before I answer the question, like that's something that we're really going into. We're trying to provide everybody with the tools to sort of figure out what those sort of silver bullets are, or what those solutions are that fit them at that time, because we all know, like you mentioned, the algorithm changes. The what works changes, but also from a marketing perspective, what is new and what makes you stand out also changes. If you're the 40,000th game doing the same thing, you're not going to stand out. So we're all about looking at what are the bigger themes, and I think if we're talking about the biggest challenges on Steam, it's all about like how are you visible, represented within the store. And I think that sort of breaks down to 3 things, which really aligns with the user flow when you're on Steam. So that's like, how much are you mentioned and included on different pages within Steam? The second bit is more about the quality of those references, like how effective are they in representing your games and getting people excited about your games. And the third part would be about the store page itself. So all of those things are about visibility. All of those things are about discoverability, about how your game is represented within the store. But they all have their different things that you would want to look at to make sure that you're doing the right things.
All right, so obviously the teams have control over their store page. Whether or not they do it well, that's a whole different question. But you have control over it. What can you do to boost how much you're being mentioned? And then we'll also go into the quality of the mentions and what that means and what you can do it. But I mean, on the basically discoverability, how often you're mentioned, what can you do to actually improve that?
So let me ask you, like, how do you quantify when you're, for example, making a change to a store page of a client, whether that was a success or an improvement or not? Like, do you have any way for do you?
I don't personally, because we don't do that. I can probably say I have never seen the back end of Steam, because that's not our expertise. But I mean, I would assume that you're looking at the number of views, hits, how many people actually saw the page.
Yeah. So you're looking at conversion rates to say something about like the quality of the changes you did, and that's why I'm asking, because you can do something very similar when you're talking about the representations within Steam. So in the same way that you're like figuring out, when I make a change to my store page, does it lead to better conversion rates, conversion to sales, conversion to wishlist, doesn't matter. You can also look at what happens if I make changes to the tags that I'm using. What happens if I make changes to the capsule images that I'm using? And that's one of the things that I think we try to simplify with Steam Data Suite because that process is a lot easier when you're talking about figuring out the improvements to the effectiveness of the store page, but it's a lot harder when you're talking about improving the visibility, the quality and the quantity of the visibility. So we try to make that easy. So, but the essence is still the same. You're making a change. What is the outcome of that? Is it actually getting better? Are you getting the type of eyeballs that you need? Are you getting the quality eyeballs? Then the third area was like, does it sell your game well?
Which quality, is a little bit important. Yes.
Yeah. Having just a lot of visibility is not the goal in and of itself. If all of those don't click through, it's useless. And actually, that's something that we see with the bigger releases. They usually have a pretty shitty click-through rate, and that is because they have so much visibility everywhere. And like the 80th time that you're seeing a reference to Elden Ring, the chance that you're clicking on it is going to be a lot smaller than the first time you're seeing that reference. So that's an interesting thing that we found just looking at all this visibility data.
So what is a good conversion rate?
That's because of what I just mentioned. That is actually a very difficult question to answer. So if we're talking about the click-through rate from visibility to someone ending up on your store page, that varies wildly. And usually, the less visibility you have, the higher that conversion rate will be, and the more visibility you have, the lower that conversion rate will be.
Yeah, that makes sense. So to
give you an idea, like for the really big ones, it's like a 0.1% or like 0.2%.
Wow, I would not have thought it was that low. But I mean, if you're getting tons and tons of exposure, and that exposure is going to people who have no interest in your game at all.
Yeah, or they've already seen it like 40 or 50 times. Like They've already decided they don't want to click on it, right? So after a while, it's just noise. Like, yeah, it makes sense.
That is true. So, I mean, are there basic things that you see over and over that especially the smaller, the indie teams can do to improve their visibility or improve their conversions?
Yeah, my number one advice in that would be to make changes. Like, one of the things that I see going going wrong quite a lot, especially with the smaller companies, is that they sort of treat setting up the store page as sort of a one-time exercise. Like,
Yeah.
we're now at the point where we're going to make the store page. Like, even if your game is not a game as a service type of game, you still want to have your store page to adjust that and to iterate over that. Like, only by iterating, in my opinion, only by iterating, you can achieve like structural improvements to your store page. And that doesn't mean that it's going to take you, a day a week. Not at all. Like, sit down, make a little bit of a plan. Like, these are the tag compositions that we're going to try. These are like some changes in the descriptions or changes to the screenshots and the videos. And then just make one change every 2 or 3 weeks, and then see what actually happens, what moves the needle. And all in all, if you can improve a few tenths of a percent every few weeks, that's going to really add up over time. And yes, the start, like the launch of your store page, the launch of your game is obviously hugely important time zone, but also like time. But don't underestimate like how much that long tail accumulates altogether.
So we've already got a question coming in from YouTube, and Brandon says, "Is there any data that you can share on Steam's audience demographics, their age, gender, country, devices, operating system?"
I don't really have that compiled in front of me right now, but we do have quite a lot of data about countries and OS usage. But I don't really have that distilled into very concrete insights for you to share right now. Sorry for that. Age and gender are a totally different thing. That's type of data that's not shared by Steam with the publishers. So to give you a little bit of an idea about where we get some of our insights from, to use Steam Data Suite, you can connect your Steamworks account, and we can log into your Steamworks, basically get some of the sales data, get some of the visibility data, and use that in all these different tools and features. Some of which are free. If you just connect your data, you unlock some of these features. And with that, we actually are currently connected with about 3% of all the games on Steam. So that means that we have a lot of data about all of this stuff, about the visibility, about the sales, and we use that to, for example, to train algorithms to make predictions about sales volumes and stuff like that. But we can also say something about these things, like about the countries, the geos, those things. But gender and what was the other one that you mentioned? Like that are not things that are being reported as part of like a sales activity going on. But yeah, definitely platform, OS, the prices for which games are sold, like that's all data that we can have a bit of a broader look on based on the clients that have connected our data. So that's super interesting. But sorry to say that I don't really have that data sort of pre-compiled.
I'll make you a real deal, Oscar. If you would compile that data, I'll put it in the newsletter and send it out to everybody with a nice little link to the Steam Data Suite site as well. It would be
deal.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
There you go. Make sure you're signed up for the newsletter. All right. So next one, I had a feeling that this talk today would go off the chart like immediately and start coming in with questions from the group. So mobile has a lot of analytic support. How accessible is Steam's backend for getting similar metrics and KPIs?
Very good question. Because this is something that's really close to what makes working with Steam Data Suite from my point of view really interesting. It's tricky. Some things are easier. I would say some things are more difficult. An example of something that's easier on Steam, like on the mobile space, there's no tag system, right? You have keywords, you can rank on keywords, but basically all the keyword optimization tools, they have sort of compiled their own set of keywords that they're matching and that they're reporting on. On Steam, that's a lot easier because you have the tags, right? There's already a whole taxonomy. There's a lot of data that we can look up. For example, within Steam Data Suite, we report on the popularity of each of the tags. So you can already figure out what is an interesting tag for you to add to the composition of the text that you're currently using. Something that's a lot harder is campaign attribution. So within Steam Data Suite, we also provide a way of tracking the conversion of people clicking on a campaign link to actually running the game. And that used to be a lot easier on mobile. It changed a little bit in the last few years, but it used to be very easy on mobile because you have like a device ID or an advertisement ID, that's sort of publicly available, both when you click on a link and when you start the game. But on Steam, that's a lot harder. Like, if you click on a link, you're in your browser environment, like you have a very different set of things or information that's available. That's a completely separate environment from when you're actually launching the game. So for us to be able to link those two activities together was one of the biggest technical challenges that we've had, and that we still have to some extent. But that's also something that makes this a very valuable solution to our clients.
All right, so wait, we've got a conversation going on LinkedIn that I want to chime in on. So, Belhassan, you're right. People in countries like Tunisia, he says, are not allowed to make such transactions because PayPal isn't allowed by the government. Can Steam lower the entry barrier and make an exception for such countries? Yes, they could. Whether or not they will or not is a whole different ballgame. But keep in mind, Oscar's not from Steam.
No. Yeah, let's clarify that altogether right now, really clearly. We're not affiliated with Steam. We are providing additional services and tools that are sort of an extra layer on top of what you already get from Valve when you're interacting with Steam. So we sort of plug into that, and that comes from our sort of inherent frustration about how important Steam is for so many game companies. I know a lot of you guys watching right now will probably be nodding their heads. Like it's such an important medium, and it's such an important channel. Like, being so limited in terms of the reporting, in terms of optimization, especially if you compare it to mobile, like it just doesn't make sense. So we try to professionalize that a little bit, and we do that via these optimization solutions or tools. So yeah, we're not Steam, but we work on these things. And funnily enough, we sometimes in contact with Valve. A few years back, we actually helped them resolve quite a serious security problem. So I won't go into that for a lot further, but yeah.
But I mean, overall, Oscar, you don't have any problem with us giving out your email address, and so everyone can complain and their issues about Steam directly to you, right? Is that cool?
Yes, the email address is spam@steamdata.
All right. So we've talked about some of those big challenges, talked a little bit about how to tackle them. What is like one of the things that you see companies doing wrong, aside from, iterating, because that is important, but what are one of the biggest things that you see these companies doing wrong, just day in and day out on the Steam store?
Yeah, I think in addition to what I mentioned, like the sort of the fire and forget type of mindset, I would say one of the things that a lot of companies could be doing better is taking a little bit of time to figure out where you could best spend your time on when it's about optimizing your store presence. So if you're so you can spend your time rewriting the description, you can spend your time creating new screenshots, you could spend your time upgrading the capsule images, or figuring out what's the optimal discount percentage for the upcoming sale. But which of those will actually be paying out the most? So that's also something that we try to help with a little bit by figuring out am I on par when it's about sales, when it's about click-through rates, when it's about conversion rates. So I think we can get a lot better at that. But actually knowing where that starting point is, where you're subpar or where you're performing well, I think that should really drive where you're investing your time. And I think that's a very obvious one. And it makes sense that it goes wrong, because you're reading like an anecdote from someone that after changing our screenshots, we improved this amount of conversion rate with 0.5%. But if that was their weak point, then it makes sense. Maybe it's not your weak point. Maybe your weak point is the thumbnails are not standing out enough, or something else. So evaluating whether that's through numbers or through asking around with other people, like where should I invest my time? What's the lowest hanging of all the fruits, basically. And another one I would like to point out is, like, if you're making changes to the store page, a pitfall in that would be to not be too structural about it. Like, yeah, we make some adjustments sometimes, but I would recommend having a bit of a sort of cycle set up for that. Like, just tell yourself, like, every last Friday of the month, we're gonna make one change to the store page, and just keep that ball rolling, and that also makes it really easy to learn from that, whether that's for that game, but also for similar games if you're looking to create and publish them later on.
So when you're looking at your site, at the Steam Data Suite site, what types of companies are actually coming in and using that data the most? Who's getting the most value out of that right now?
I think in terms of how much value you get out of it, it's pretty similar, and it has to do with how we price it. So our pricing is relative to the amount of added value that you can get as a client. So in that sense, it's fair for everybody. But in terms of nominal value, it's obviously the bigger companies. If they increase their conversion rates with 0.5%, then that's a lot more money at the bottom line than when a small indie increases it with 0.5%. But yeah, overall, I think the only common denominator with our clients that are successful would be their willingness to make data-driven decisions. Like, are they actually looking to improve? Like that, I think that's also something that we set out to do. Like, in the end of the day, it's just such a waste to see some very good games not flourish on the platform because they got snowed under because that marketing side wasn't like the visibility side wasn't up to par. That's something that we want to prevent. So the more you want to optimize, the more you want to make these data-driven decisions, like, the better outcome will be.
All right, so we've got a couple of them coming in from Discord now as well. So how much of an impact does a Steam page trailer have? I'm thinking conversions, but does it help with discoverability?
Thinking conversion, but does it help with discoverability? I don't think it necessarily helps that much with discoverability, because if we're talking about the discoverability, we're either talking about the quantity or the quality, right? So the quantity of the discoverability, it's hugely impacted by the text composition that you're using. Obviously, everybody, I think, is pretty set on that, and I think that's correct. But also things like the text that's on your page, which helps with the search and visibility within the search. But video, I do have an interesting number about that. About 64% of all the store pages on Steam never changed their videos. So they either started with none and kept none, or they started with one and kept that. But we're actually seeing that if you're looking at the top 5% in terms of performance, there's actually quite a big difference between companies that change the videos and that not change the videos. So companies that are within the top 5% change the videos on average 11 times a year, and the companies that are within the lower, the games that are in the lower 95% only change it twice a year. So it's a bit of it's not necessarily a causal connection, but it is telling. Like, if you're changing, like, these companies are successful and they're changing their videos quite often. So maybe that's something for you to think about if we're talking about the importance of your trailers and your videos.
All right, so does that count like the live stream videos now, or is that just like the uploaded static videos, or is there a difference?
There's obviously a difference, but what I'm talking about right now, that's about the video within the carousel. So that's in there with the screenshots on the store page. Yeah,
excellent. I was just wondering how that whole live streaming thing actually factors in now, especially since a lot of the things aren't even live; they're recorded and then like reshown.
I think that's also where your answer is. Like, they're doing that because it works, right?
Well, that's true. Yes.
But that's the same, and this is a very good example because this is something that's very close to what I said earlier. Like, it works until it doesn't, right? It works because not everybody is doing it, and then everybody is doing it, and it doesn't work anymore. So We're not about telling you should be streaming because that's now the thing. We're about showing you, making it really easy for you to see the numbers so that you can try streaming and figure out, is this now the thing or not, right? And then maybe by the time that you're watching this or listening to this, the streaming is not going to make a difference anymore. I think we're already at that pivot point right now. But maybe by that time there's something else. There's something that you can do with your capsule images. There's something you can do with new type of promotions or whatever. And we just want to make it easy to discover what those things are at that time for your games, because that's infinitely more valuable than some random guy on the internet telling you should be doing this and this, because that's always outdated. That's always, gonna work better for some than for others.
So does the data that you all have show developers, it's like, okay, hey, look, this a similar game is doing this differently and they're having more success than what you're doing? I mean, is that something that's in there right now?
Yeah. So one of the things that we're doing is we're putting, for example, all the capsule images and all the discoverability assets side by side, so you can see for yourself, like, are you really standing out from them in a way that you feel works? So that's one way that we're looking at competitor data. We're doing something similar with your store page assets. So we just have like a side-by-side comparison of all your competitors, which you can obviously pick from a list that we can help you with, or you can manually add them. And for all of the games on Steam, we also have quite accurate estimates about the sales, wish lists, and revenue. So yeah, for us, the next step would be to even make the link between when a competitor changes something and what that does to the competitor's performance. Currently, we have those two things, but they're like a bit separated. But yeah, we're looking to, like, somewhere later this year to sort of bring that together. That would be, like, for us, the holy grail, because then you cannot just learn from what your competitors are changing, because we have quite a few features around you being able to see when your competitors are making changes. So we have a history going back to 2017 with the price history of all the games, when the changes to the store page descriptions and screenshots. So you can sort of already learn from what your competitors are changing in terms of, like, they're ditching these screenshots in favor of these. Is that something that I want to do as well? Maybe they're focusing on something. They know something more than you do, especially if you're a smaller company. You can obviously learn from what the big ones are doing, because you can assume that they put some more energy, budget, and thought into figuring out how to do it better. So if you have a AAA competitor that's ditching all the dark screenshots in favor of light ones, or it's introducing screenshots that are more focused on the characters than on the gameplay, like, that's something that you can sort of piggyback off. But yeah, for us to link that to their performance, that's the next step, and it's going to be a really exciting step. But we're not there yet.
All right, so if some of the best performing pages are updating, like, their videos, you said, like, 11 times a year. So in theory, if a developer goes in, or one of the publishing houses goes in and updates their store page once a month, that should be, and of course, if the updates are good and things, but that is that enough time to spend on iterating your store page? And then if so, it's like, how long? Because obviously there's a huge rabbit hole of data that you can fall into here.
Please don't. Yeah.
Yeah. So how much time should a team be dedicating to this per month, so they're not doing coding or art or whatever else?
That's really hard to answer. It really depends. I would say that it wouldn't make sense. I would say it would make sense, like, if you're talking about creating a game, there's obviously already a marketing component in that. So that makes it a bit of a gray area. Like, when are you focused on marketing and when you're focused on making a game that's marketable, right? Making sure that your product is unique is obviously the best thing you can do marketing-wise, because then you don't have to sell something non-unique, right? So there's I think there's a bit of a blurry line in terms of focusing on the store page. My advice would be to try and find a way to focus on making the actual changes, but also looking at what the result is of those changes. And yeah, Steam Data Suite makes that easy, but there's also other ways to sort of compile these different data sets into one overview to get that idea of what's actually happening. But in terms of percentage, I think that's really really hard to say something about. I would say that it doesn't make sense to wait until the very end to say, okay, now the game's almost done. Let's think about setting up the store page, and then at one point that's done, and then it's done. Try to think of it more as an ongoing thing, and as you probably are with your game as well, right? It's also something that evolves over time. So why not the store page? Because it will take some iteration and to find that proper fit between how you're proposing, how you're making the game proposition, and what people are actually looking for.
So that brings up another interesting point. Obviously, one of the reasons that you want to get your store page up sooner rather than later is so you can start getting wish lists.
Wishlist, yeah.
There's all sorts of commentary and theories and random calculations that are going on about how does a wish list convert to a sale. We know that older wish lists are bad and
less valuable. Yeah,
because we all get those emails. It's like, hey, there's a item on your wish list for sale, and you click it and you're like, I have no idea what this is. So somewhere I clicked on this, I don't know why. What are you seeing right now in terms of wish list to sales converting, and how far back from launch is safe where they're actually still useful?
I don't think I can say anything in particular about that. Like for us, it's as hard as for you guys to sort of figure out of every wish list in your wish list balance, like what's the worth of them. So that's definitely like a feature that we have got requested a few times, and definitely something that we can probably find a way to sort of through probabilistics and maybe a little bit of machine learning find some insights there. But yeah, it's not easy to sort of
it
say something about
depends
it.
is a
Sorry.
perfectly good answer, Oscar. Don't worry about it. It's okay.
Yeah, but it's not what you want to hear. That's the thing.
Well, no, but it's still like the motto of this show, and that's where we get everything going along. So we've got about 25 more minutes. If you've got a question for Oscar from Steam Data Suite, not from Steam or Valve, they do their own little thing over here. Pop them in chat, either in the podcast, in the streaming area that you're watching, or on the Discord, and we'll get it going. So we talked earlier about the constant evolution of Steam and their algorithm, and what's working now is not necessarily going to work later, and what worked before isn't necessarily working now. What are some of those important factors to success that you think are going to be important on Steam in the near future, in the next 6 months or so?
That's a good one. Well, I think it's a bit of a. I think the thing that we just talked about, like making sure that the product is unique. That's sort of a timeless thing. It always makes marketing easier, and it makes whatever you're doing easier. I honestly don't know what would be sort of the silver bullet of right now. You mentioned something about like the wish lists, right? Having a certain amount of traction before you actually put your game out there, whether that's going from being announced to being in early access, or from early access to actually being released. I think there's a lot to be gained there. But to be honest, like that's a puzzle that even we, with like data about 20,000 SKUs on the platform, haven't cracked. Because it's changing quite rapidly, and there's some really weird things going on. Like sometimes if you're doing really well on the first day, it actually seems to like that the algorithm is punishing you for that, or in some cases it's enough if you have a few thousand wish lists to actually get some visibility and to sort of get that cycle of visibility going. And in other cases, like having tens of thousands of wish lists isn't enough. So it's a puzzle that we're still putting together, actually. Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to basically come down to, keeping your game front of mind and showing and articulating to players what's changed, what's updated, why they should buy it now versus later, or come back and play the game. now versus later.
Yeah, and I think if I can add one more thing to it, what sort of springs to mind now, I think with the growing offer of games on the platform, like it's not news that the offer is growing, right? It's going steady since ever since the green light thing stopped. But making sure that you have a unique enough product, like I think I can't emphasize that enough. Like knowing your niche, and making sure that not just you're making the game for that niche, but also that how you proposition the game on the platform fits that niche. I think that can be really successful, especially if you're maybe a smaller team, with a bit of a smaller budget. Another thing that's sort of an ongoing trend, that's something that's I think growing in the last 2 years, is forgetting about trying to get the users within Steam to see your game, but actually getting users from outside of Steam to visit your Steam store page. And that's something that is obviously on mobile has been like the norm for the last 10, maybe longer, 10 years. But like doing user acquisition and finding those other platforms where these people are, where you're not competing with so many other games, and try to get eyeballs there and get them to your store page and get them to convert. So I think that's something that's been getting more prevalent in recent days.
So, and now we've got them coming in again, fast and furious. So this one coming in from Randy on the Discord. What is your take on a free game with paid DLC content versus a paid game with paid DLC content?
I like if you want to hear that one is better than the other, or one will work better than the other, I can tell you that. I think they all have their different types of approaches. I think communicating clearly which part of the product contains is something that not everybody is doing right, and that can bring some frustration and cognitive dissonance with it. But other than that, yeah, whichever one of the two you're doing, just do it well. That's sort of, it's a bit of a crappy answer again, but yeah.
So what do you see as the best off Steam funnels? Is it news, festivals, Reddit, Twitter? I mean, we got to add TikTok to that now, to get people to come to your Steam page.
Right. Well, the best thing that can happen is something that you don't have to pay for, that's gonna generate a lot of page views. So that's obviously like that huge streamer that randomly picks up your game and loves it and recommends it, and like that's can make your game basically. But other than that, yeah, we see that for our clients, for the smaller games, it works really well to have like more targeted channels of advertising. So something like Reddit can work really well. But if you need a bit more volume, you're obviously going to end up using the Facebook channels and things like Google and YouTube. They're obviously very important as well. So I think, yeah, maybe that sort of answers that question.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we constantly see it changing. And I was doing pitch deck reviews at the East Coast Game Conference last week, and I had to look around at the audience when they ask a similar question. They're like, "Where's everybody coming from?" I was like, "Well, all of you who are old like me, you're going to roll your eyes when you hear this, but there's so much coming off TikTok right now. It's like that is one of the biggest funnels that we're seeing. Don't ask me why. I can't explain it. I have no idea. I just know it works."
Well, there's some thing you can deduce from that. Like it's where the eyeballs are, right?
Well, that's true too. Yeah, whatever's hot right now and whatever's new, yeah. I can absolutely see that. All right, so from Discord, what kind of long-term or long-tail insights can you offer? What makes a game sticky 1 to 5 years out?
Right. So, to answer your question, we don't go as far as like looking at the retention of the games themselves. That's something that I've done in the past as a sort of an in-game analytics consultancy gig. But right now, what we're seeing is like if we're thinking about the games as a service thing, that's what we're talking about, like keeping the game up to date. And I think Steam is a very unique platform to be able to do that, where you have all these different ways of communicating with your players. So use the community features within Steam. I think that would be the biggest one. But also do all the smart things when it's about like discount promotions. Use them to grow the audience and make the audience that you already have happy. I think there's a lot of
Sorry, you buffered there for a second on my side, and so I was staring blankly at the screen.
Sorry, I'm back again.
Love that. All right, so this is a good one. How should companies balance data versus art when making a game? We're making a game, store or game proposition.
Yeah, that's a good one. This is an interesting one because it's sort of a thing that I'm run into with no disrespect, usually with the smaller companies, because there's some people that feel that sort of looking at stuff from a data perspective, it's sort of the enemy of looking at it from an artistical perspective, right? Making data-driven decisions or commercial decisions is the opposite of artistical freedom. Now, I really don't see it that way. I understand where that sort of comes from. I think the solution to that is to make sure that data has the right sort of influence on your decision making. It's not so much that data is the only factor that you're going to make your decisions on, that it shouldn't be, but it's also not the case that it doesn't make sense to do it totally based on the art as well. So if you're making that completely artistical project, it's obviously fine that you're not looking at the data. You just happen to be in a position to launch it on Steam, and that's awesome. And some people buy it. That's awesome. But if you have some like commercial perspective on launching your game on Steam, it obviously also makes sense to have that commercial drive or the drip down a little bit into how you do the product and how you position the product, how you create the store page. You want to find the balance there. And I think data is like an unmissable seat at the table when you're looking at like how are we going to make the store page descriptions, how are we going to make what type of screenshots do we need, what type of capsule images are other people using and all that stuff. So it in that sense it's also it can be a source of creativity as well, like looking at your competitors as a sort of inspiration for what you could be doing. And that's also why we sort of structured some of the features within Steam Data Suite. Like we give some explorative stuff where you can sort of get inspired, like what are other people doing, what can I be doing? And then you make some changes and see what the result is of those changes. So that way we can sort of facilitate throughout the whole optimization process.
And so this is one of the things that we have a lot of service providers that come to us, and it's like they understand and they can talk to the big AAAs, but they have a harder time relating and getting some of the indie studios on board. And a big part of it is what we always tell them: no matter how good your tools are, if they don't know how to use them, they're not going to be effective. So what are there basic things, or are there places that folks can go to learn how to analyze the data that they're seeing at the most basic level? Because I think that's one of the biggest issues with the indie teams, because they just don't have enough time.
Yeah, it's in the perfect world, you wouldn't need a manual to do that stuff, or you wouldn't need to have to make to filter through the data to do that stuff. And I think in that sense, in Steam Data Suite, we already have the data aggregated and segmented in ways that aligns with how people actually go through it, and we try to answer the questions in a very structural way. And it's one of the hardest things that we do when we're building the platform is like, how can we make something that's super complex a lot easier to understand and read? Because we also know that a lot of the people that use our platform aren't necessarily data analysts, or they're not necessarily even marketeers. Like we have also like producers and people in the C-suite that are using the platform. So we want to basically, it all comes down to what do you need to answer, like what is the question and what do you need to answer that question, and we try to sort of already fill that in based on the questions that we know publishers have, or self-publishing people have. But not every service provider is equally good at doing that. And I would say, looking at the back end of Steam, looking at Steamworks, they're pretty terrible at it.
So why do you think Valve is not providing the services and the data that you all provide basically on their behalf?
Well, for some of the things that we provide, it actually, helps you get ahead over your competitors. Obviously, if everybody would have that, then nobody would get ahead. So that wouldn't really make sense. It's not like interesting for them to provide this information. I think for some of the stuff that we have, it would make a lot of sense for them to sort of give a bit more insights in what the trends are in terms of like different segments or different features or different genres and tags. I think that can only make stuff better, but it also makes the system a bit gameable. I think that's a bit of an overstatement, but it does make it easier to manipulate how visible you are within the platform. And it's something that some of our clients are looking for. And again, that only works if some of us are doing it and not all of us are doing it. I think we're getting a bit of a tougher job when we actually have the majority of Steam publishers using our platform, because then it will be harder to provide them the edge that we promise.
So Michael has a question on the Discord. So often Steam pages will feature several call to action graphics. Like join our Discord or Wishlist now, check out our other games. His strategy has been around only including one call to action, the Wishlist one, and not to dilute the effectiveness. But I'm curious as to what the data says. Is there any data around what makes for an effective call to action on a Steam page?
Again, this is something that I don't think we have ever looked into in detail. We have a lot of data about changes, these type of changes, like adding these CTAs to the store page or removing them or changing them around. But really looking at the individual effectiveness, that's not something we ever did. So sorry, I can't really name a number for that.
So I would say right now, you can get them to join your Discord if you're too far out for the wish list to be effective, and then keep them excited through the Discord so they do wish list in the future. Or you can go straight to the wish list, and that way, every time you do an update or whatever, it gets pushed out to to everybody on that wish list. There's an update and that sort of stuff. But like Mandisa W just said, that is a fantastic case for A/B testing your page changes. Try it, see what happens, and go from there.
Yeah, exactly. And see, measure what happens, and it's something that you can do. Like write down how many Discord server people you have today, and then put the banner up and see how many you've gained in a week or in 2 weeks, and then put the other banner and see how much wishlist you gain from that. At least you have something to decide on. These numbers, like even if I would be able to tell you like conversion rate of one versus the other, it will still be. It could be a very different case for different genres. That's something that we're seeing also when we're making, for example, like benchmarks about the conversion rates, about the click-through rates. That's something that's just vastly different based on a lot of factors, and the size of the game is a very big one. So that would be a sort of a tip for me. Like if you're asking this question to other people and they'll give you a concrete answer, make sure that their games are in that sense similar, like in terms of the size, the reach, the sort of the level of sales that they're having, because those numbers will be vastly different if you're a bigger company than when you're a smaller company.
And I think the thing to remember too, if nothing else comes out of this talk for a lot of teams, especially smaller ones, is this is not a one size fits all strategy. This is something that you have to plan into your week and your sprints and everything else. It does take time, and you have to learn some of the stuff, and you have to play around with it. Like you said, the teams that just go up and put up their page once and then never change it are the ones that don't see the results that need to be seen.
The one size fits all solution is experimenting and iterative improvements.
So Eduardo on YouTube says, in your opinion, what are the top 5 things that impact visibility on the Steam algorithm?
Right. So obviously, the number one thing is the amount of sales and wishlist activity that you already have going on. Unfortunately, that's also a difficult one to impact, because it's a hyperbolic cycle in and of itself, um, which you could consider as a bit of a flaw of how they approach it, but it also makes sense from a commercial perspective if you're looking at it from Valve's eyes. So having success makes you more successful. That's a bit of a weird one, but that's by far the number one thing that's going to help your visibility. Furthermore, obviously making changes to the tags. The tags are important. One thing that's an interesting one. Maybe I won't get to 5 things, but before I do, one thing that I think is very interesting to look at is the top sellers list. Now, the top sellers list in itself will not get you like an infinite amount of traffic. That's not like, it's not such that popular of a page, but the global top sellers list does paint a very good picture about how much the algorithm likes you. Because if you score very well on that, again, when it's about the amount of sales that you're achieving, that means that the higher you are on that list, the more you're featured throughout Steam. So that's definitely something to look at. Another thing to consider is obviously discount promotions, like doing deals. Daily deals are very effective in getting visibility, but yeah, all the discounts are. Needless to say, you're going to get a lot more useful visibility when you're not, like when you're doing a discount outside of a seasonal event. But even inside of the seasonal events, it's also very lucrative and very interesting. And I think that's something that more and more people are catching on to. Like, if you're going to be doing more, if you're going to do something with your like long tail of your game, make sure to participate in the discounts. And that's definitely something that I can vouch for, looking at the data of our clients as well.
Well, I mean, we just had the solution come up in chat right now. Just cure 1,000 people's eyesights like Mr. Beast, or hell, just be Mr. Beast, and then you have plenty of success. Not a problem at all.
Yeah,
all right.
But yeah, other than that, there's always going to be smaller things like the live broadcasting, giving some visibility as well. I'm looking at some numbers about like which channels give you how much visibility, looking at our clients' data. So the new and trending areas is responsible for on average 9% of all the store page impressions or the visibility of the games throughout our client base. So that's obviously like that's where it comes from, that the launch of the game, the very start, is such an important event. So yeah, that's another one. Just top.
All right, so Bandy's got a Shark. If you've got an amazing top tier level of store page that's near perfect, is updating it still super important? Yes. Outside of game updates and such, which are usually just thumbnail changes.
Well, let me ask you, like, how do you know it's near perfect? You only know that by making more changes and figuring out, like, the conversion rates, they're remaining steady. We also report, for example, on like the time spent on the page, or things like how often the same user comes back to visit your page. So in that way, you can think like, when do I reach the ultimate thing? I think every game has its own roof, but like their maximum conversion rate possible, but I think none of us will ever reach that, and that's okay. The trick is to get as close as possible to that.
So, I mean, the short answer is yes. If you're getting 100% conversion from every view that comes to that, and you're getting a ton of views, then no, you don't need to change your page. But if you're not, you should. All right, Brandy had a really good
thing I want to add to that.
Oh, go ahead.
Is that the time goes on, things change, right? I think we talked about the streaming, the on-page streaming feature before. Like, that worked really well. It was like the perfect way of boosting your store page at one point, at one point it won't be anymore. So as time goes by, the ways of standing out, the ways of catching the attention and converting the attention of people on Steam will change as well. So even if you have the perfect store page today, it may not be the perfect store page in 2 years or in 3 years. So that in itself is also an argument for.
That's a very good point. All right, Brandy's got a question that I'm very interested in myself. If there's a AAA game dropping the same day as you are, is that going to hurt you, or is it going to help you because more people are going to Steam?
It's definitely going to hurt you. I've seen this a few times with my own eyes, unfortunately. That's definitely going to hurt you, and it's not even necessarily the same day. It could be the same week or the same month. That's going to hurt. So be sure to make sure that you're not releasing in the same week or day as one of your big competitors, and if anything, be a little bit earlier than them. There's a lot of players that have like sort of a set budget. It sounds a bit rigid, but you have an amount of money that you're comfortable spending on games every year, every month, every week. And once they spend that, especially if it's on a AAA game, then they'll be entertained by that, and you miss the boat. So that's absolutely something to keep in mind and to keep an eye on. So
wait, we're supposed to stick to a budget when buying games?
I don't know about you, but I got a budget.
I might have missed that memo. All right.
Yeah, one thing to say about that is in Steam Data Suite we can help figure that out. So we have like a way for you to see similar games coming out in the future, so you can sort of plan around that and sort of even keep track on when they're changing their release date, so you can get an update on that. So you can even move your own release date if that AAA game also changes their release date. So in that sense, it can't go wrong, basically.
That's handy. And don't launch in Q4. That's the other.
That's because there's a lot of AAA games then, right?
All right, so we got time for one or two more. And I think we've got them queued up. If you've got more questions, go ahead and post them, but we are running short on time. So does Steam Data Suite allow for more advanced user export and analytics such as BigQuery and DataViz? And I don't even know what that is. So yes.
So yes and no. Normally when someone asks us this, our first question is, what are you looking for? Like which question are you looking to answer that we're currently not answering? Because maybe it's something that more people are thinking about, something that just is a logical addition to the platform. We're still adding to Steam Data Suite every day. So, if these things come up, then we'll try to include them as a feature. But it does make sense, especially for the bigger companies, to have because they will always have their own data flow. They will have sales data outside of Steam, obviously. They'll have, physical sales. They'll have even merchandise data and all that. So for them, we actually do facilitate a data coupling with their own data lakes, whether that's through exports or through other types of database connections. So that's definitely something that we provide, but it's usually something that only the AAA companies are actually interested in and looking for.
All right, so here's one. Is there a best price for an indie game to achieve at least 100 to 1,000 sales?
It's zero.
But that's not a sale. That's a download.
No, I'm just trying to illustrate that obviously the cheaper purchase is going to be more easy to get people to convert. But that's not.
But don't you get
what you're looking for, right?
Do you not get into a situation where gamers will look at something and go, well, if it's only a $4 game, it's probably not worth playing?
I think that's an effect, but I think the nominal price is still it's not that much of a commitment if it's a lot cheaper. So people were more likely to sort of jump. But actually could do a bit of an analysis on that as well. Like how's the conversion rate change as you move up in the price range? That's an interesting one.
The other thing, and this is, I'm going to surrender to data on this at all times, but if you start super low like that, then you're not going to have that much of an opportunity to do discounts. Your discounts aren't going to be that meaningful anyway. And we all know that discount time and sale time is these gigantic spurts in sales overall. So if you start at $5 and then you say, hey, it's 50% off, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that doesn't matter, but that's just in my mind. But I'm the person that's always like, don't launch for less than $15.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, your goal is not to have the sales. Your goal is to have the revenue. Unless, again, it's a completely artistic, expression, and you just try to reach as many people as possible. Then it could be a bit different. But yeah, I don't really have like the data in front of me of that right now.
All right. We'll get that data too. It is. I mean, it's always curious to see how much that actually, affects things. So, all right. We are running out of time now. Oscar is on the Discord server. He's got our wonderful guest of the show tag. So he's one of the folks in yellow over there on the right. If you have questions, absolutely keep them going on there as well. You and the 5,000 other people that are on our awesome server. Let's talk. This is your chance to plug what you all are doing. So what is coming up next for Steam Data Suite? What's on the horizon? What should people be looking for from you all?
Yeah, so thanks for that opportunity. I think I already talked a lot about what we do. So yeah, there's not really a lot of need to go into that into too much detail. But what's next for us is, for one, to make that connection that I mentioned earlier between a competitor making a change, which we're already reporting on right now, and actually what that impact of that is on their sales and revenue and wishlist. At this point in time, we already have like very accurate sales, revenue, and wishlist estimates for all of the games on Steam, but they're like the lifetime total numbers. So we want to actually go to the next step and actually start providing the same level of, or a similar level of accuracy in the data, in the estimates, but then on a day-by-day basis, which, as you can imagine, is obviously quite a big step for us. So that's a big one. Another one is for our campaign tracking solution to link into different platforms better. We can, for example, let the external platform, whether that's like an influencer network or an affiliate system, we can relay the fact that we registered an install back to them so that they know how to optimize their campaigns to be more effective. And we want to sort of connect more platforms to that and make that more integrated into areas like Facebook, which is really important, and Google. And other than that, yeah, we have still quite a lot of other things that we want to do, but yeah, we really try to listen to what people want to determine the priority of different changes.
I just noticed our wonderfully awesome community manager, who we have not managed to run away from the company after a month, doesn't have permission to post links on Twitch. Ash, try that again with a link. You should be a moderator now.
Congratulations.
So, Code sums it up right here. Thanks for helping the small guys get a foot ahead. This is the kind of stuff that everybody needs, and learning how to use it is obviously fantastic. And I'm going to hold you to the whole benchmarking, put it in our newsletter thing. But yeah, aside from that, thank you so much for this, Oscar.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I love to talk about this stuff. So yeah, sorry that I don't have all the numbers in front of me all the time. That's not really how it works, and also my memory doesn't really help the process. But yeah, where
Nerds.
we can, we like to add to that.
Nerd.
One last thing I want to say about the features, like the benchmarking that we talked about. Understanding, is my click-through rate above par or below par? Is my conversion rate to sales and wishlist, is that above or below par? Like, that's something that's currently in the pipeline, so that will be released in a month or two. We're a small team. We're only 4 people, but we're working on this every single day. And yeah, we're excited to work with even more awesome companies, whether they're small or large. That doesn't matter.
Link to the newsletter. You can go to indiegame.business and you can sign up for the newsletter right there.
All you have to do is download the publisher list. It'll sign you up for it. I think we may have a link. Hold on, we got a link tree. Go ahead and play us out, Dan, and I'll look that up.
Linktree. Thanks so much, Oscar, for hanging out with us today. This has been super informative and super nerdy. And if he says nerd, like I say noob.
if somebody got accidentally interested in what we're doing and want to know a bit more, steamdatasuite.com, there's a big sign up button on the top. You can get a preview of everything that we're doing. If you connect your data, you can access quite a bunch of features already, and even preview the ones that are included in the paid stuff. But yeah, that would be a good starting point to see more about how we do it and what we do.
That was one heck of a link you just posted in the Discord there. Wow, that's like 5 lines long. So I'm just giving you a hard time. Oh, wow, look at that. Oh, yeah. So if you're watching on here and you want to join the Discord, discord.gg/indiegamebusiness. And if you're in the Discord and you want to join the stream and see people's faces, you can do it on twitch.tv/indiegamebusiness, YouTube @indiegamebusiness. Just look Indie Game Business, YouTube, Twitch, whatever, TikTok, right? TikTok. Yes, because it does exist. And thank you so much, Oscar. And thank you so much, Tripwire Presents, for being amazing and supporting us. Do we got something next week, Jay?
We do. We have Elisa Walls, who is the executive director of the IGDA Foundation, affiliated with not exactly the same as the IGDA. They're the ones that you and I did the diversity summit for.
Yeah, that was good.
So yeah, Alyssa will be there, and then after that, we're gonna have Wahid from Looper PR and Marketing. This is, I mean, Heather's knocking it out of the park. We're like booked up for a month, so we're not going anywhere. Well, I am later, but not now. So yeah.
So thank you all, and have an amazing weekend. It's Friday.
Yes. Thanks, Oscar.
What are you doing this Friday, Jay? Or this weekend?
Friday, probably splitting firewood. That's probably what I'm going to be doing this week.
Maybe we get some sun.
Yes.
I already got some sun. I got burned.
And Oscar, I will see you at Indigo.
Nice.
Definitely. See you there.
Awesome.
All right. Take care, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.